Welcome back, Treasurer. Thank you for sitting through that last spot of training, and thank you again for returning. This podcast is the second in the module of the treacherous task of treasuring your club's treasures. As Treasurer, made Très easy.
The topic of this podcast is budgeting. One of the hardest things to do as a new treasurer is to magic a yearly budget out of thin air, especially if it's something that you've never done before. This podcast will take you through a series of suggestions about how to put together a budget and stick to it. We'll talk about what a budget is, why you need one, when you should do it, how to put one together, and where, well, you can do it anywhere you want really, I guess, like the bathroom or in a long elevator ride or in a boat or... Okay, so what is a budget? It's an estimate of the income and expenditure over the course of the year. And why do you need it? So you can blow your cash on hookers and blow, and you wouldn't even need $1,000 for that. Just kidding. You will find that your budget may be broken down into smaller budgets, for example for each club event. Now, when you should do a budget isn't necessarily something that occurs to someone as an important piece of information. It seems obvious that it should be the first thing that you do as treasurer. Now, you can totally do that, but you might find that it's really hard, given that you have no idea how much to spend on each event, how much money comes in through each ticket sales and merchandise, etc., etc. We suggest it might be a good idea for your club to create the culture of having the budget written at the end of the year for the following year's treasurer. Now, this budget doesn't have to be followed by the next treasurer exactly as it's written. Now, the new treasurer might want to allocate funds to a new event for the club or to find sponsorship from other sources, and this is completely fine. However, for new treasurers, this initial budget for the year would be a great place to start. What's more, it has been written by someone who has had the experience of the club's cash flow situation. So please do consider, if you don't already, to write up next year's budget at the end of this year. Like I said before, this is not setting the club's financial situation in stone for the following year. Budgets are, by nature, not meant to be totally absolute and uncompromising. They're meant to be flexible. Unfortunately, the cost of a flexible budget means that you need to readjust regularly, which means more work for you. But you don't seem like the kind of person who's going to shy away from a challenge now, do you? So here's what you need to do, like all the time. You need to have a yearly budget, which is an estimate of the income and expenditure for the year. Now, this includes a specific budget for each event, which estimates how much you would spend and bring in from the event's earnings, from ticket sales, merchandise, etc., etc. If you're extremely lucky, your estimates will be exactly what ends up happening, and you won't have to do extra work to update your budget. But no one is that lucky. After an event, or after your club has made a sizable purchase, these actual figures need to be entered into your ledger and compared to your budget. If you've gone over your estimates, then funds will need to be reallocated from events that have not yet happened. Or if by some miracle you are under budget, you can redistribute funds to other events or other expense streams. Doing this on a regular basis after spending money helps keep an accurate picture of your club's financial situation. Now, let's say you've spent the whole year being the world's best treasurer. You've regularly updated the club's budget and kept on top of your club's spending. And now you're at the end of your term. What do you have to do now? Well, write up next year's budget. And it's not as hard as it sounds. Assuming that you've been the world's best treasurer and done all that stuff, you just have to look over your actual income and expenditure from the figures in your ledger and determine if these figures represent a realistic picture of how things might occur next year. You might see that your club is in a position of positive cash flow and you can afford to add an extra event to your calendar or buy extra merchandise for your club members. Or you might make a decision that it would be wise to cut back on a few things, like not having a club's newsletter printed in colour and on glossy paper, or that gourmet sausages are just not a viable option for your barbecue events. However you decide to reallocate funding, remember to do so in a way that you are prioritising what is really important for your club, so that next year you don't run out of funds for your club's necessities. Having spent everything this year on hookers and blow, unless of course you are the treasurer of the Hookers and Blow Society, but you probably won't get a grant for that. When rewriting your final budget or your budget for next year, be sure to take the following into consideration. Budgeting is a process whereby the involvement of your core executive team is crucial. So run through this sort of stuff with your club's president, VP, secretary and ARC delegate at the very least. Source of income. Set reasonable goals for income based on the figures from this year. If you have figures from last year as well, and the year before that, you may be able to project an income for the following year. You can estimate money in from ARC grants because there's a set formula, which we will detail in the next podcast. Make sure you factor in a contingency sum of money, or a buffer for emergency use only. A safe amount is about 10% of your total budget. If you decide to cut funding from a particular area, then justify it with a short explanation for the incoming executive team. Oh, and remember one thing. When you are writing your budget, please don't use the exact dollars and cents figures for the actual ledger. Round everything up to the nearest $10 for simplicity's sake. Now we come to talking about where you can do your budget. And no, I don't mean doing it in the air or in a camel's back or underwater. Well, I guess you can, but that's not what I meant. Well, actually, you probably can't do it underwater. But still, that's not what I meant. Where are you going to keep your budget's documents? Probably in the same place that your ledger documents are, near where you store your scanned invoices and receipts? Yes, that's right. OrgSync. Because why not? It's there. We got it for you to use and for you to keep all your club stuff there, so you don't lose it. I mean, otherwise it's like having a club storeroom, but you choose to keep all your club shit in the back of your car. Oh my god. You do that, don't you? Stop it! Stop it right now. Get your shit together and put it all in one place. Please. Thank you. And with that last piece of advice, we end this podcast. In the next and final episode of our Treacherous training, we will run you through how to submit the perfect grant. Thanks for listening.